Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful, bright fall morning today. It's a joy to be here. It's a joy to see all of you here. I'm sure the Lord is equally filled with joy that we've gathered this morning to draw closer to Him. And certainly those of us who've been to Mass already this weekend have within us already Christ. And so it's a beautiful image in my mind right now that Christ is within us and among us as we proceed this morning to learn more about what the church teaches us about God so that we can know Him more, so we can love Him more. So let's begin with an opening prayer in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Under your paternal gaze, O Lord, and with confidence in your goodness and wisdom, and in the loving patronage of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, may our families be a sanctuary of virtue and a school of wisdom. May they prove to be, as Christ has promised, a haven of rest against life's burdens. In the sight of the world, may we give glory to you, O Father, and to your Son, Jesus, until the day when through him we shall gather together with all the angels and saints, sing the divine praises in the eternal life to come. Amen. So starting off this morning, I want to give thanks to our families at the third grade. I don't know how many of you were able to make it, but we had a fantastic All Saints Day presentation last Sunday where our little third graders dressed up as the saint of their choice and presented the life of that saint as if they were a living statue of that saint right here in Holy Family Hall with cookies and milk. And it was a joyful occasion, and many parishioners came to me and told me how much they enjoyed speaking with your children and how well prepared they were. So kudos to you parents for making them ready, because those two rehearsals we had, I know, was nothing in comparison to what you must have done at home, so thank you for that. A little plug also before I get into more faith formation stuff. I don't know, and this is for the women in the room, I don't know how many of you are aware that we have a chapter of a fabulous women's Bible study program called Walking with Purpose right here at Holy Spirit. And this program is so fabulous that the bishop is trying to make sure that every parish in the Diocese of Bridgeport has a chapter. So we're lucky we already have it. And it's been running for, I think, at least 3 years here. I started attending Walking with Purpose when it came to Holy Spirit Parish. And it was life-changing for me. It has this beautiful combination of being a place where we can sit with Scripture and get to know Christ better through the Scriptures, but also get to know other women who are like-minded like us, who are striving to know and love Christ more, and share those little stories of life, the challenges, and support each other and pray for each other. And even my husband will say he's noticed the change in me since I started going and Walking with Purpose. He'll say, oh yeah, I've seen those moments where you're going to lash into typical screaming Val, and all of a sudden I think you're praying or something's happening and it doesn't happen. So it has brought me a great deal of peace. And so if you have the chance and the time, and I know it's hard to find it as parents with young children, but as doing it now as an older adult female, I wish I could have done this when I had young children, because it really does change your outlook on life and bring you peace and a greater understanding of the purpose of life and the role of a mother in the family. So if you have the opportunity at all, I highly, highly, highly recommend this Thursday morning at 9:30, we have a session. Actually, it's every Thursday at 9:30, but this particular Thursday is what we call a Connect Coffee, which is an opportunity to come, and there's no homework that you haven't missed. So there's no homework due this Thursday. So it's a great chance to drop in and just test us out and see if you like it, because you do not need to sign up. You can walk in anytime, sit with a group, test it out, see if you like it, and then decide if you want to sign up. There's also, for those of you who can't make it in the morning, an evening program, which meets on Thursday nights. I think it's every other Thursday night at 7. Yeah, it's on our website. You can look it up. But again, you can walk in anytime check on the calendar, it's always listed when Walking with Purposes meeting, and stop in, say hi, say, I just here to try it out. You'll be warmly welcomed, I assure you, and you'll have a great time. So consider that. Let me zip through some calendar items for November that I know you know this because you have the calendars, but I just want to say it to remind us. We have the Christmas play on December 15th, and the first rehearsal for that will be Tuesday, November 19th at 4 p.m. in the church for grades 1, 2, and 3. On November 24th on your calendars, you see it says Thanksgiving Family Service Project. I think I mentioned this last month that I realized that Thursday is the same day as the Stanford Parade, and it's the Sunday before Thanksgiving, and a gathered event may not work for us. So instead of a gathered Thanksgiving service project, I will be sending one home to you. And really what it is a way of encouraging you to participate in the Thanksgiving dinner collection that our Social Concerns Ministry already does. However, I'm going to give some suggestions of how you can make it more real for your children so that they can participate in a more meaningful way and that you can do this as a family rather than just running to Acme, picking up a turkey, and dropping it off, and the kids don't even know you did it. So that's what's coming up for Thanksgiving Family Service Project this month. The next thing I just want to check again, I did this last month, is everyone receiving those Friday email newsletters that I send out? And if you're not getting that, please see me later and let me know. Because those are important, because as I've said in the past, the home lesson packets are good. They're a good start. There's a lot of activities in here that are suggestions, but in those weekly emails I do what I don't have the time to do on Sunday mornings, which is really go into more detail with you on what I think is the best things for you to do, what things I think you can skip if you're pressed for time, and maybe even suggest some ideas that are not in the packets that I think might work. So it's important that you're receiving those and that you take a look at them before you do your weekly home lessons. So now let's take a look at what November's theme is. November's theme is living and dying to be a saint. As the whole year is focusing on the liturgical year, our November theme is looking at the fact that the church uses the month of November as a time for us to think about the last things, to think about death, to think about purgatory, heaven, and hell. It's a time where we pray for the souls in purgatory. Especially this week up until November 8th, you can earn a plenary indulgence if you visit a cemetery in a state of grace and having received the Eucharist, and you pray for that soul and the intentions of the Pope. And a plenary indulgence is a beautiful, incredible thing to receive for a soul. So I encourage you to do that. That would be this week. Throughout the month of November, you're going to be discussing these things with your kids in different ways. If you look at the monthly rundown at the front of your packet, you'll see that the first week one lesson is prayer. I don't know why they did that, because with All Saints Day having just been Friday, and All Souls Day yesterday, and this week of indulgence that we're in, it seems to me that the saints is the more logical subject to cover this week. So I'm going to suggest that we go a little out of order and do the blue lesson, the saints, first this week, and say prayer for the following week. And then Christ the King will come at the right time for this Sunday that is the Feast of Christ the King, so it's a perfect time to do that lesson. Then the bonus packet on Advent activities is just that, it's a bonus packet. You might be familiar with this from previous years. It's ideas of ways you can acknowledge that it's the season of Advent in your homes. We get so drawn up with Christmas and Christmas preparing that sometimes we forget to have an Advent. So these are ways that you can have an Advent, and there's a lot of ideas in there. You are not expected to do all of them, maybe not even any of them, but look at them and say if there's something that speaks to you. If there's something that, oh wow, my family could do this and it would be great, then go for for that. So that's a packet for you to look through for ideas. I'll be giving you more. That's for December when Advent begins, which is December 1st. Today, your catechists will be quizzing your children to see if they've learned the Hail Mary. Hopefully that goes really well. This month, I combined both the younger saints and older saints memory verse into everybody doing the same, because I thought the Hail Mary was very, very important, and even though I figured it might be easy for some of the kids, it's a good idea to check up and make sure everybody knows it. Because believe it or not, I've hit some kids at confirmation that go to me, I don't know. Never too late to learn. So this month, though, we're going to do the memory verse as it is listed on the front of this envelope. You'll see it under the colored boxes. It says memorize this month to recite at December classes. If your child is in 1st, 2nd, or 3rd grade, they have just that short phrase to memorize, which is, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Beautiful prayer to know, quick, easy, and always life-giving. For the 4th and 5th graders, they're going to learn the prayer, eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. May they rest in peace. A beautiful prayer for the dead, and appropriate for the month of November. A prayer you can say if you happen to be visiting a cemetery this week. Beautiful, beautiful prayer. So are there any questions for me at this point? Is Father Suarez? Yes. Okay. Then I'm going to hand it over to Father Suarez for you to enjoy your lesson. Thank you.
In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. Pray together, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. Again, if you cannot hear me, let me know. I can't believe it's November. Crazy how quickly time goes, especially realizing all that we have to do between now and the end of the year, including Christmas. But this is my opportunity also to be able to extend an invitation. On December the 1st, I'm going to be installed as your pastor. So just personally give me an opportunity to be able to extend, if you're around, on December the 1st at the 11:30 Mass, Bishop Caggiano is coming here for a special liturgy, and my family is going to be coming up, so you want to see more Suarez's, I'm the best looking. But they do look an awful lot like me. My parents will be here, it should be a good time. But today I'd like to begin, as in this month of November, we started the month with All Saints Day, which is one of my most favorite times of the year. And to do so, to talk and see this. Let me go Sweet. I want to do so in a little unorthodox way. A little crazy, but I'm crazy. That's all right. For those who can see this picture, can anyone maybe tell me the story of what's going on in this picture? Obviously, it's being captured in a moment. But if you will write a story to describe a caption to this picture, what might it be? Who is this man? Where is he? What is he thinking? What's the expression on his face? Is something you can tell me about who this guy is? A little closer, you want to see his expression. Please.
He looks like he's going to be walking up a mountain or something. He's out in nature, sort of rugged, I don't know, something like that.
Rugged, write a story. This is good. How about someone else? Help me help finish it out. This is good. This is a good start. Here we go. What is the expression on his face? Yeah.
To me, it looks like he's built something or building something.
He's built something or building something. Ah, very interesting. What's the expression? Is he sad? Is he angry? Is he? You think he's angry?
He's annoyed.
Pensive. He's thinking. Determined.
Is it Charlton Heston?
No.
Looks a little like him though.
Determined. This man's name. This man's name is Father Martin Martinez Pascual. He was taken in 1938 in Spain as as the shot was being taken of him, this priest was looking at his executioner who had a rifle leveled at his face. And he was about to be shot. He is going to be killed seconds after this picture is taken. And he knows it. Because when I see this face, I see, again, it's interesting, again, the combination of things. Not ready for a journey, perhaps to the head of a mountain. We see maybe a little pensiveness there. At the same time, this is, I think, a very picture that's resolute. Myself, at least, in my own opinion, I don't see fear. Do you see, is he afraid? No. So the question I would have to ask you, and it's something that's worth not so much hearing an answer now, but thinking over, is what does he know? What does he know that maybe even his executioners do not? We celebrated, I'm sure, in festive fashion, although I didn't change the calendar for this year. This past Thursday, All Hallows Eve. So we had then, well, it was Friday, not Thursday, All Saints Day. And then we celebrated this past Saturday, All Souls Day. It's kind of important to understand this is the distinction of, particularly, what's the difference between All Saints Day and All Souls Day. Because the way we usually talk about particularly loved ones and family members, friends of ours who have died, when they're at the wake or the funeral, at the burial, often we'll try to comfort one another and say, we know that they're in a happy place now. They're at peace. But the truth of our Catholic faith is, this is certainly our hope, that eternal life and heaven is our home. And that is where we do find peace. But it's also an understanding that heaven is a place where we live for all eternity in a relationship with God. And in heaven, you have to understand, in that sort of free relationship, if you and I make choices in this world which set our wills in opposition to that of God's plan, you have to realize if we were to spend an eternity with a person we can't stand, it's not going to be heaven for us. It'll be hell. But when we die, we do die with this is a great hope to know that, especially in our baptism, the possibility of going to heaven is ours. It's our inheritance. It's where we're meant to be. And the challenge then to live in accord with the dignity we received in our baptism is that if we die in the state of grace, so that there's no mortal sin in our souls, but still very much attached to our own will, our own ways, and our own sins, that we enter in a time of purgation, or purgatory. Purgatory still exists, from now until the end of time. And then finally in time, the second coming of Christ, it will cease to exist, and all that will remain is either heaven or hell. Hopefully we choose heaven, but you understand the distinction between All Saints Day, which is a celebration for those who are actually in fact in heaven, all those who are declared, and for those who are not known. Which is why in the afterlife, again, there's heaven, there's hell, realize the existence of purgatory. And in this, some will helpfully think that there's a reality of the people who are in heaven and the actual saints who are there. You want to be super, super technical when you're talking about the saints. A person who is actually a saint is not just a person who's in heaven, but a person who's heaven that we know about. And there's a process of canonization of a saint, whereby the church has a particular, almost legal process. That a person, if they lived a good life, and has a reputation which is of great respect, and they're well known, and they're talked about after their death, they might open up a case for a person to be called blessed, or a servant to God first. And then the people out there who know about this servant of God, a good person, man or a woman, who lived their life very heroically, they can ask that person to help them, particularly in the performing of a miracle. And if a legitimate, real deal case of a miracle happens, and there's an interesting article, if you Google it, New York Times, from a scientist who is himself an atheist, who had to do an objective investigation into a tissue sample that she had to study. By the end of her article, she goes on to say that she is an atheist, she doesn't believe in God, But she was shocked because she was able to analyze the sample, which is clearly made up, but it didn't make sense to her, her conclusions. Because in the end, it was actually the cause, being sent to Rome, of a legitimate miracle to help someone to become a saint. So the first miracle makes a person from serving God to blessed. Second miracle makes a person then receive the declaration of someone who is a saint. So there are many more people in heaven than there are necessarily saints. It would be very technical. But of the people in heaven, I think, and imagine you might know, also family members and friends who have died, with whom we should have a great assurance are in fact in heaven. For those of us who are post the age of reason, like older than 6 or 7, we hold out the hope. We always pray for those who have died. But for those who die under the age of reason, think of my nephew Sebastian. 4 years ago, he was 19 months old, and while he was playing with my sister's pet cat, his heart had cardiac arrest. He died. Apparently, we would find out later that his heart was compromised because he had a very advanced case of Lyme's disease. My sister was suspicious of that as she brought him from doctor to doctor to doctor, and everyone told her that he was fine. We know now he was not. My sister was right. But for my nephew who passed away, I know, with the assurance of faith, he is one of those people who are in heaven. And I know I can ask my nephew to look out for us, and he kind of does. So again, afterlife perspective, we were going there. But in this month of November, we're mindful then of praying for the dead, who might be in purgatory, so we can help them get to heaven. For those of us who have chosen hell and who have died and are in hell, there's no help for us. We've made up our minds, and they've made up their minds. Challenge to say, if we were to die today, where would we go? Fortunately, heaven, which is what we strive for. Purgatory, we can help the people too. Another way, it's actually kind of helpful. These terms aren't used, but it's really very helpful. The church, those who are in heaven, we call the church triumphant. Those who are in purgatory are called the church suffering. And we who are still here on earth, we're called the church militant. The ones in hell are separated forever. And hell does exist, by the way. But in this, we recognize a sense of real call that God has given us to be holy. But it kind of begs the question, what does it mean to be holy? If I were to kind of draw a picture or show you a portrait of it, like I did for the Father Pasquale, what would it look like? It's funny, often when I work with young people who are very adventurous, I will spare you from this right now. I usually ask them to do a series of charades. So I have a whole group of high school kids who will line up in a line, and I'll ask them, to play charades. We ask them to do some silly things, sing in the shower, that kind of stuff. I'm like, like this, they're options. But then I always ask them, the final thing, I say, all right, show me what it looks like to be holy. Be holy, charades. Kids think for a second, and they usually fall down, asleep to their knees. You put your hands up and praise like this. They have to say, that's not what it looks like to be holy. Those are maybe what we call pious postures, but no. A person who wants to actually be holy should be able to just stand on their own. Because to be holy means that we're kind of separated from the world, but not just that we're separated from the world, but specifically that we are connected and attached to Him. Jesus Christ, who is literally the King of the entire universe, which itself is an understatement. He is the Lord of all things. In Him, through Him, all things have come to be, and all things will be reconciled again to the Father. He is the way, the truth, and the life. He is the source of all peace, source of all joy. He is the reason why we're here. And the saint is someone who is grounded and who knows that. And ultimately, I propose to you as part of the secret of Father Pasquale. And I think there's my hope in your religious education of your children. Part of the secret you can teach your children so that they can very boldly stare down whatever challenge, whatever thing might come their way, because they know who they are. They're beloved children of God, who will never be abandoned. And even should the worst thing happen, to the point of their life being taken from them, they know who they are. They're part of His reign, His kingdom. And we hear in the Beatitudes, even to say, blessed are they who are insulted, persecuted for the sake, falsely because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven. What that priest knew, what I'm hoping you can convey to your children, maybe less dramatic terms, is this truth. But I also like to share with you a couple stories that I call of the saints, who are of particular inspiration for me. You're going to notice through the slideshow, the majority of these are saints who are men, because I'm a guy. So the saints who are of inspiration to me just happen to be guys. There are a couple women in here who are like my superheroes as well. But it's interesting fact that if you were to look at the total number of saints, what would you suspect would be the ratio of guy saints versus girl saints? In the total number, if you were to look at, and you were to do an analysis of all the number of saints and names that we know that have been actually declared by the church, what ratio of guy saints versus girl saints would you suppose? 50-50. It is actually 50-50. Remarkably. Maybe a little surprise you, but it's true. But the saints I'm going to show are just because, again, I'm sharing with you saints who are my heroes. This one is a hero of mine. This is St. Joseph Cupertino. I love his story, especially as a student, because St. Joseph Cupertino is someone who had, or today, probably diagnosed with a major learning disability. It was very difficult for him to study. It took him years and years and years, and he kept being held back and held back and held back. But he's a very good man who always wanted to be a priest. And finally, in the final exam, he got held in front of a panel of judges to serve as his final test. And he knew going into the test, there was only one answer out of the thousands of questions they could actually ask him he could answer somewhat confidently. So he sat down, ready for his test, and would you know it, the one question that the panel of judges just happened to ask, rather randomly, was the question he knew the answer to. So he passed his examination. He was ordained a priest. He's a great patron saint of mine and a friend of mine going into a test. If I know I haven't prepared very well for it, maybe I have, I just don't know the answers. And St. Joseph Cupertino is someone who can look out for, well, any of us going into an exam. But the cool pictures back here, and the reason why I also want to show little random facts, is the fact that one of his gifts wasn't his intellect, so much as, this man could actually fly. So you have a picture of him here by the capitals of the pillars here, and you have a picture of him literally flying off the stoop of his house. Literally, the villagers who lived in nearby towns knew him to be, sometimes traveling between villages and towns, 6 feet off the ground. And they just would literally watch the man fly from one place to the other as he is form of ecstasy and prayer. Kind of crazy. And no, I'm not making this up. Look it up yourself. It's true. Also, I know I've told you guys about Padre Pio, right? I've told you. Yes, I love stories of Padre Pio. Awesome saint. You see his hand over here extended blessing. That's not gum or something on his hands. Padre Pio possessed the gift of the stigmata. Literally the wounds of Christ in his hands. He was so extraordinary that he could also fly. He could levitate. He could read hearts. He could read souls. He could be in 2 places at the same time. And I always wonder, if you could be 2 places at the exact same time, you happen to be here now, where's the other place you'd be? He could do extraordinary things. He's an amazing saint. If you don't know his stories, only to look up. He, for me, is a hero in many ways. But I want to begin with these 2 examples of saints because these guys are actually exceptions. There are some saints who were extraordinary with those senses of gifts, but they're actually the exception. A real face of holiness is not someone who can do all those extraordinary classic things that I can't do, you can't do. But a real face of someone who is holy is someone who actually, well, can be like another hero of mine. Pope John Paul II, who lived, of course, in our time. One of the greatest of not only minds of brilliance, but a humble, humble man. I know I shared a story when I had the opportunity to meet Pope John Paul II, at least be in a crowd of another million some people in Canada. I was responsible with my group to get food. And as I walked out of, the barracks as we're in food, I remember stopping in my steps and I thought, what just changed? Literally all the hair on my arm, you ever got a sense like electricity in the air? You know something's really different going on? What's going on? And it's at that instant, Pope John Paul II, helicopter began to do circles around the field where I was standing. No one told me he was there. I couldn't see him. Before I see him or heard him or anything, I could just literally stop and feel something. He arrived. Face of holiness. Extraordinary man. You don't know him, you should totally get to know him. he's an amazing man. Here we have Saint Therese of Lisieux, who is, for me, also one of my greatest heroes. For many reasons, including the fact that the evil one, the devil, hates her. It's an interesting random fact that if you're ever actually officially, or to witness or attend an exorcism, if you bring a relic of Saint Teresa's little flower in your room, the evil one will go absolutely berserk because he can't stand her. She died at the age of about 23. She's a great mystic of the church. She's also been declared as a doctor of the church. Her profession as a doctor of the church is not because she's a medical doctor or has a PhD in anything. It's especially knowing that she had no formal education, really post-grade school. But she had a very extraordinary gift when it came to being a master of the spiritual life. And in her spirituality is actually very simple. It's that we do all the small little things with extraordinary love. In her own writings that have a story of the soul, if you ever want to read a sense of profound diary, an insight into an amazing life of a saint, to know a story of the soul from Saint Teresa, she describes once having to wash a pot. She hated washing pots, she hated washing dishes, she always tried to not do it because she felt she was bad at it. But then she realized, you know what, if she were washing a pot, it's because she was doing it for love of Jesus. That she then became resolute, that when she washed the pot, it was because she loved God that she was going to do it. It's also very beautiful about St. Teresa reflecting the story of a soul about her position within the church and what it means for her. And she'd go on and see all the different things that she couldn't do. But then she realized a sense of real solidarity within the church, that she saw that her responsibility was to be the heart. She wanted to be in her life then the source of a love within the church and dedicated. That, to me, is a sign of great holiness. Both of her parents are actually also canonized saints. Pier Giorgio Frassati. You ever heard of Frassati? For me, he is a hero. He also died very young, at the age of 25, I believe, because he contracted an illness, because he had dedicated his time to the service of those who were sick and who were poor. So he contracted an illness from one of the patients he was serving. But he was not a medical professional. This was him volunteering his time. Well, one of the reasons why I love Pier Frassati is the fact that he is someone who was totally misunderstood, especially with his parents. Even to the point that he was sick and he was dying because of it, his parents didn't know he was sick. He is someone who would get constantly in trouble because both of his parents, although he was very Catholic, his parents really cared less about the church. His father actually was a very well-known form of, not a politician as much as a news broadcaster. So in today's world, he might be like the head of a major news broadcasting. He was a newspaper editor and writer. Powerful and influential person who hated the church. He, on the other hand, Pierre, is someone who loved his faith and was dedicated to the church. To such an extent, though, his parents who would always yell at him for either showing up late, losing his coat, losing his shoes, not having the money they gave him, never asked him the reason why. The reason why he was late or didn't have money was often because he gave the money he was supposed to use to buy a train ticket to the poor, and he decided to run home instead. The reason why he lost his coat is because he met someone along the way who didn't have a coat, who needed one, so he took it off and gave it to him. When he died, tens of thousands of people came to his funeral. His parents had no idea. They thought he was a loser and a bum. But apparently he literally was running town because deep down he was a man of extraordinary faith. In the meantime, you see most of the picture. I mean, he's a handsome young guy. You see him with this guy over here with a paper hat. He's someone who loved life. He was an athlete. Great man. For me, he is the hero. He's also a saint. Don Bosco. You ever been to a Salesian school? Anyone here? Okay, couple. So Don Bosco is a founder of the Salesian order. Don Bosco, for me, is a hero for many reasons, not the least of which is his style of ministry as a priest is what I try to emulate and copy. One of the fun stories I knew of his growing up, and it impacts the sense of the impact of a young person. Don Bosco, when he was a young teenager, was trying to bring his friends to church. And as they were passing through the village square, there was a street performer who was trying to vie for their attention. And his friends were like, Don, you go to church. This guy's pretty cool. We're going to stick around here. And I asked him, no, we're going to Mass. I said, no, we're sticking around here. So he then took it upon himself and said, all right, that's it. He went to the street performer and he challenged him. He said, you're taking my friend, but I can be better than you. And he started a little quick, tit-for-tat competition. It was a race, it was this jumping competition. Finally, it went down to the final thing. Nabokov was just a little better. But he was a big guy compared to the performer who was rather small. The performer finally said, you know what he's going to do? He turned, he pointed, he said, see that tree over there? He said, the performer said, whoever can put their feet to the highest point of that tree, they will win the competition. And Nabokov said, you're wrong, you go first. So the guy went all the way up to the top of the tree, and it was swaying, and it was bending, and everyone realized, because the guy was a lot smaller, there's no way Don Bosco could climb as high without the tree snapping. Came down, and I was, that's not too bad, but I can do better. He climbs the tree, and then puts his hand in and proceeds to do a handstand on top of the tree, putting his feet a whole, like, body's height above the man. Climbs down, totally won, it's over, and brings his friends then to Mass. That's sort of like the spirit of using one's personal talents and gifts for the sake of bringing people to church, why he's one of my heroes. Not only that, he also had the ability to surround himself with other men who were saints. St. Dominic Savio, you've heard his name before? St. Dominic Savio died at the age of 14, also from an illness. His personal motto, even at the age of 14, was death rather than sin. Death rather than sin. He's a man who's capable of extraordinary virtue. And he was never afraid, even, again, another story, to stand between friends who were fighting. At one point, he walked up into the playground and he saw buddies of his, classmates, who were literally about to pick up rocks and throw them at each other. Not a good situation, but he courageously stood in front of them and held out a crucifix. And he said, before you throw the next stone, look at this cross and say, Jesus, though innocent, died for love of me, forgiving his enemies. And he said, now you throw the stone, throw it first at me. Broke the fight. Death rather than sin. Dominic Savio, this is the face of holiness. For me, he is a hero. How about Jose Sanchez del Rio? Do you know his story? He died in Mexico at the age of 14. There's a pattern here. They're young. Jose Sanchez del Rio, during the Conquistador movement in the early 20th century, the Mexican government had decided that to practice the faith, Catholicism, anywhere in the public square was strictly illegal. Not only that, if you were to be caught, priests would be often dragged into the streets and shot. If you were attending Mass, you'd be dragged into the street and shot. There was a great uprising, though, within the Mexican people to try to defend their own religious freedom. Mexico, after all, has always been a Catholic country. The Blessed Jose Sanchez del Rio, who's now a saint, joined the fight in the support of a general. And during a battle in which he then exchanged by offering his horse to the general who was about to be captured, himself was taken. And the executioners and the government officials, who were particularly cruel, forced him, after literally slicing the bottom both of his feet, removing the layer of skin from the soles of his feet, to walk around the city. And at any moment in their tortures and their cruelty, they taunted him, saying, this can all end if you just say death to Christ. And he refused. Can you imagine? No skin on your feet, walking one step, being bullied, bruised, punched, spat upon as you're taking every step, finally stepping at the edge of what is your grave, dug in front of you, and be given the last choice. This can all end. You have a long life ahead of you. We're going to give you riches. We'll set you up. All you need to do is say death to Christ. He forgives the men around him. He's then stabbed, falls to the ground, and he's bleeding. And then he carved with his finger and traces of blood on the ground, a cross in the dirt, and he says, Viva Cristo Rey, long live Christ the King, before he shot. What did he know about where he was headed when he encouraged at the age of 14? sometimes forget. Vera Madonna. She lived and died, I think, 1978. She, in high school, was a very good tennis player. And one of the days that she went out for a match, she went and suddenly she experienced extreme pain in her shoulder that she went in for medical testing and found out that she had a very rare and very advanced case of bone cancer. She then had to go under a series of advanced treatments to try to bring the cancer in, but in the course of her treatments, she made the decision to forgo any pain medication. And the reason was because she felt if God had entrusted suffering to her in her life, she wanted to take the suffering that came into her life and to offer it up for the sake of others. Just as Christ embraced the suffering that came on the cross for the sake of others. Very often her friends would go to the hospital to try to be of comfort to her, but they came to realize, no, they weren't comforting her. She was the one, even in her pain, who was comforting them. And she was known for her literally electric smile and great joy. Her cause of canonization was well underway. Soon he'll become a saint. Maximilian Kolbe. Again, I can go on. Time is up. Okay. Maximilian Kolbe. Do you know his story? Yes, I heard it yesterday. For those who don't, Maximilian Kolbe, for me, is another hero. He's a Catholic priest, Franciscan, who lived in Poland. And during the Second World War, because he was a good Catholic priest, and because he was speaking the truth in a world particularly of Nazi occupation, the Gestapo hated him and put him on their radar and finally sent him to Auschwitz. But while he was in Auschwitz, there was a prisoner, one of the fellow prisoners, who escaped. In the course of the escape, the day following, so as to try to dissuade any other prisoners from escaping, the Nazis selected 10 prisoners who they were going to send to the starvation bunker for a certain death, painful death. And of the 10 men who were selected, one man protested and begged and pleaded for his life, explaining that he was a father, and he had children and a wife who relied on him and pleased if they would spare his life. Maximilian Kolbe, as a priest, hearing that cry, boldly stood out of line. And the eyewitnesses there say that in doing so, literally the guards themselves started to shake. And it's just crazy to think that anyone would have stood out of line because they could have been killed instantly. But the eyewitnesses again say there was something about his persona and charism standing on the line that literally instilled fear into the guards. And they asked him, "Who are you?" And he simply replied, "I'm a Catholic priest. I wish to exchange my life for the man who has protested." The guards allowed it. Maximilian Kolbe would then spend 21 days in the starvation bunker. And unlike the sounds of great pains and cries of agony that would often be heard in starvation bunkers, Maximilian Kolbe led the other men condemned to death and sung hymns of praise to God. He was the last to die by lethal injection. And they say he was the last to die because he had the greatest of all hope. He knew where he was headed. He was going to heaven. And for me, he's a great hero and a great example. But he's also, it's extraordinary to know that the man he offered his life in exchange for was able to actually attend St. Maximilian Kolbe's beatification in Rome. He survived the war. All Saints Day. We have such a great cloud of countless witnesses to all of us in the faith, what it means for us to look like and to be Catholic. But so many of the stories of great valor, are often not known. And for me, these are my heroes growing up. You know, sure, I played plenty with Transformers and G.I. Joes and all that kind of stuff. I read lots of, novels and stories and whatnot, but the real stories that inspired me, and my mother would always buy the stories of the saints and make me read them, is that these are the people who, for me, serve as an example of how I want to try to live my life. They're varied. Some of them are great sinners who become great saints. Some of them are great cowards who suddenly find courage. Some of them are not academically well, they all came to meet Christ. And in doing so, for them in their lives, it changed everything. And what's so extraordinary, though, about the sense of the impact of their witness is that is a witness which continues to bear fruit, often hundreds of years, even after they live. You as parents would hope for yourselves, but also for your children, that their lives are ones that could be a difference in meaning in the world. There's no greater sort of difference in impact that they could have than to live lives and to know lives of extraordinary holiness. To be so connected and related to the creator of the entire universe and cosmos, to be able to understand their identity and a sense of a noble calling and mission. All their stories which are varied are stories which are varied at the same time a sense of support. In your role as parents to your children, please, in the lessons this month, share stories, look up stories. There's so many websites about examples of the saints. You can encounter them either by looking up random names, by what they're patrons of, but again, just Google it. But in this sort of stories, realize there's examples of real human beings who are just like us, who won. They made it. And let them become the stories of inspiration, not just for you, but also for me. These are my heroes. These are my close friends, and look out for them. The last thought I want to kind of leave you with over the course of November, as we pray for the repose of the souls of your family members and friends, but also to get to know the saints. Try to lead your children always in prayers, asking the saints to look out for us. Because they are our constant network. They who are the church triumphant are literally working on heaven for all of us. The concluding statement is from St. Therese of Lisieux, St. Teresa Little Flower, whose picture I brought up earlier. She knew she was going to die young, and people would try to encourage her with this idea of this eternal rest. She's a fiery woman who said, I don't like this idea of rest. She said, when I go to heaven, I'm not going to heaven to rest. I'm going to heaven to work. She said, my job would be to shower down roses on anyone who needs them so they can come to know the love of Christ. She still does that. Not only she, but all the saints. Don't be afraid to ask for roses to be showered down on you, your family, and children, so all of us will someday be able to get together at that eternal banquet which never ends, which is the banquet in heaven. God bless you guys for my prayers every day. See you soon. Take care. Bye.